It's time to get a little bit more technical about some things, and we're going to be talking about player controllers today, because so far everything that we have done has been inside of our third-person character blueprint itself, and while that works perfectly fine, that also limits us to only being able to use this blueprint. What if we want the player to maybe change into using a different kind of character or something like that? That is where player controllers come in, because everything we're doing we can also do through a player controller. The default engine setup uses the blueprint for the player character itself to put all of its programming in, and honestly I personally also prefer doing it that way. You could very well also put all of your input controls in your player character and do it through that way if that makes more sense to you. We're going to do all of this business that we added last time with the UI, adding it and removing it through the player controller instead, because we need to pass in a player controller anyway, and this way what we're doing is we're always getting player controller 0 instead of the player controller of the player that's actually doing this action, if that makes any sense. So let's get into that. Just like most other things, we start by making a blueprint class, and we can make a player controller as one of the common ones. And usually I prefix that with PC for player controller, and we'll just call that player controller, which is very bad naming, but it'll work for now. And this is just another blueprint, just as you're used to. You will note that this doesn't come with an event begin overlap like other ones, and that is because this is not really something that you place in the world and interact with in that way. It technically does exist in the world, but that's more of a technicality than it actually being useful. So let's copy over what we put in here, and with copy over I mean just cut it out here and paste it into here. And now the wonderful thing is we don't actually need to provide the get player controller here, because we are inside of a player controller. What we can simply do is we can get a reference to self, and that will be able to plug into anything that needs a player controller. Now we do need to actually make a variable here for the UI, because we didn't copy that over, but we very much can just copy that over as well. And just like that, we have moved that code into our player controller. So now we'll see, if we run the game, we don't have the UI anymore, because we don't trigger it from the third-person character blueprint anymore. And the way we're going to fix that is through making a game mode, because we need to set the default player controller through the game mode. So let's make one of those as well. Make a blueprint class which will make a game mode form, and I like to prefix this with GM for game mode, and we'll call this tutorial game mode. And opening that up, we will see on the right hand side here in the details panel, we have a bunch of different default classes that we can use. The game session class, the game state, the player controller, the player state, the HUD class, the default pawn, the spectator, and so on and so forth. So the default pawn is what will spawn in at your player start. So for that, of course, we want to spawn in the third-person character. And then the player controller is the player controller class that we will be using to control that character. So by default, that's just set to the base player controller. But we've made our own player controller here, so we can enable that as the default. And all those other ones we might get into at some point, they're not very relevant for right now. Now, going into our project settings, we can look for game mode, and we'll change our default game mode to our GM tutorial game mode. That means that any level we make, unless we specify otherwise, is going to use that game mode to drive all of those decisions. You can go into the world settings here, and you have a game mode override, which by default is set to none. And if we wanted to have another game mode for this specific level, we could overwrite that game mode. But now, assuming that this is actually hooked up into event begin play, which I kind of maybe forgot, doing all that, we have our UI back, which we can add again, and then we can continue, and everything works as it did last time. So in general, when something needs a player controller input, it is easier to just put it into the player controller because that way you can just get a reference to self and put it in there. And beyond that, you can really put anything that you would put in your player character itself also in the player controller if you really, really wanted to. Now, what kind of code would you place in your game mode is the next logical question you might ask. And these are kind of like the rules. It's called a game mode because you can change these about. If you have a deathmatch game mode in your shooter game, or maybe you have a capture the flag game mode, all these kind of rules that these different game modes are reliant on, you would program into your game mode class. So in this case, we have a system where we have like these coins that we can pick up, right? And that code exists entirely on our character at this point. Let's see where we have that. Actually, it seems like that code exists on the coin itself, which also works perfectly fine. But maybe, instead of directly saying this coin is just going to add things to the player character, what we could do is we could cut this out of our coin code, and we could put that into a custom event in our game mode, and we'll call that custom event collide with coin. We'll add a parameter to that, and we'll call that object, something simple like that, and we'll make that a actor object reference pin, which we can connect up to this. So if whatever is calling this has collided with a third-person character, then that third-person character gets his coins increased. And the wonderful thing about this is you might be asking, why would we ever split up our code like this? This seems very, very counterintuitive. Well, the wonderful thing is, and now we're going to get into a little bit more of a technical explanation on the coding parts, is right now this is a custom event, right, which we can call. That's entirely fine. But what if we actually threw away this custom event and instead we made a new function called collide with coin? Name is already in use because I didn't compile previously. Now that we have this stored in a function, and we can put this in as a parameter there as well. Now this function will do the exact same thing, but remember way in the beginning of this entire course when I described actor hierarchy, the actor having a child, that being the pawn, and the pawn having a child, that being the character, and the character having a child, that being our BP third person character, right? Well, a child can actually take a function that exists on its parent and say, well, it's kind of nice that you think that that needs to function that way, but actually when it's related to my specific kind, so an actor might say, if I collide with a wall, I need to stop, right? But maybe you have a child of the actor, that would be a ghost, and you can override that function on the actor that says, I need to stop moving when I hit a wall, on the ghost. So when the ghost sees, hey, I'm colliding with a wall, it will do something else. And I'll just show you a practical example of that to make it a little less confusing. So what we can do is we can get the game mode tutorial game mode here, and we can create a child blueprint class of that. We'll just call that GM tutorial game mode child. And we have a lot of overridable functions here. Most of those are provided by the engine, but that will also now include collide with coin. So if we make that, it will first run whatever the parent function is, but we can remove that and put our own new functionality in. So if we make a base game mode that has a potentially just empty collide with coin function, then we can make 5 different game modes and implement whatever we want to happen when a player collides with a coin for all of those separate different game modes. Instead of having to program 5 different types of coins, all we need to do here is we need to get a reference to our game mode, which we can simply do by get game mode. We can cast that to our GM game mode, which will also work when the game mode is a child of this one. So if we have 5 different game mode children that all stem from this game mode, this cast will just straight up work. Collided with a coin, which is the other actor. And now whatever we do in our other game mode will get triggered through the game mode instead of through this coin, which is a lot more flexible. Now, if you have a game which only has one game mode, this probably doesn't matter that much, right? If you're just simply making a platformer that only ever has that one game mode and is not going to have any other need for any other code to run when something like this happens, this might be overly complicated. But it is a good thing to understand how a system like this works, because this is how a lot of games in the end actually end up functioning. Is these objects might not directly do anything. They just call to the rule set, which is the game mode, which then actually executes the code that needs to be executed. That way it's a lot more manageable and a lot more modular to create new code and change existing code. So that is the player controllers and the game modes, mostly the game modes. I personally don't really care for player controllers for the most part, I'm going to be real with you. It's nice to be able to add some things in here in a much simpler way, especially with multiplayer focused things. But mostly the important thing to take away from this video is the way you work with game modes. All that said, next time I'm going to do something else that we're probably going to actually put in the game mode, and that will be saving and loading save games. That can be a relatively complex thing, so tune in next time to see how we make that all work. And a very big thank you to all of my Patreons. You can see them on screen right now. If you want to help out supporting the channel, there's a link down below in the description to the Patreon page. And a special thanks to my Cave Digger tier Patreons, Sir J. Thomas,